ladies and gentlemen. I would like to warmly welcome you here to this very special event, the launch of Gail Cameron's book. It was Albert Einstein that once said, "It has become appallingly obvious that our technology has exceeded our humanity." Tonight we hope to disprove that, as this book certainly is a celebration of the human spirit, telling the untold stories of South Africans whose courage, fortitude and discipline enabled them to succeed against all odds. Tonight we open with our guest speaker, Alan Swiegers, followed by Gail Cameron, after which we'd like to ask you to join us for snacks and drinks. Alan Swiegers, as the COO of Deloitte, has always put people's interests high on the agenda. As a manager appointed to look after staff and recruiting roles, Alan became a natural de facto people leader, being appointed to oversee the writing as well as the launch of the Deloitte Way. He was made head of audit in 1998, and in 2000 was appointed partner in charge of Pretoria. In both of these roles, staff matters as well as staff well-being formed a major part of his daily responsibilities. I would like to name but two stories that attest to Alan's extraordinary humanity. It was also during the time, as partner in charge of Pretoria, that Alan had to deal with Joshua Rashapola, who was involved in a horrific car accident that left him paralyzed. And if it weren't for Alan's deep, trusting intervention, it wouldn't be for him where he is today, running a business from his home outside of Pretoria. When Ron Crawford from Deloitte in Canada was traveling to South Africa with his wife, they were left stranded at a hospital after a shocking bus accident that claimed the lives of 12 people, until Alan intervened, ensuring that Ron's family in Canada were kept up to date with the developments, as well as taking photographs of the hospital, because all intents and purposes, his family may have assumed that he was hooked up to an IV under a tree. It was at this time that Ron also can recall how he was welcomed into Alan's home as part of the family, and it's something that he remembers to this day. Alan was then promoted to the position of COO of Deloitte Southern Africa in 2006, a position that he still holds. Alan regards his biggest challenge as having to deal with the aircraft accident which claimed the lives of four Deloitte staff members on October 21st, 2008. The consummate compassion that Alan brought to bear in dealing with the tragedy has become a defining study on dealing with tragedy of that nature. As Alan says, "I enjoy people, and I enjoy making a difference for people. I'm not in it for myself. And it gives me great joy to see how others achieve and to see how happy and fulfilled they become." Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Alan Swiegers.
Thank you very much. Thank you for those kind and unexpected words. My boss is also here, so I must be careful. It really is a privilege and an honor to have been asked to speak here tonight. We all know Gail, and we all know how good Gail is. But to get a boertjie from Pretoria, who 15 years ago couldn't hardly string a sentence together, to speak at such an important occasion in Johannesburg tonight, she's got to be bloody good. I'm really honored to represent tonight. There's 9 contributors to the book, but I'm really honored to represent my 8 co-contributors and 8 truly remarkable people. What I find very intriguing in the book is that more than half of us, the contributors, are chartered accountants. So I don't know if in our profession, if we just need the most help, or whether we just realize that we need help and put our hands up. But it's clearly that chartered accountants need a lot of help. When I was asked to speak tonight, I thought I will do some research on leadership, because you can't speak to such an esteemed audience if you don't know something about leadership. So I Googled leadership, and you can do this test tonight when you get home yourself. It is unbelievable. I put in the word leadership in Google, thinking that I will now get some wisdom from the computer. If you put in leadership in Google, you get 294 million pages. That's when I realized leadership is a wide topic. I then realized 294 million pages is a bit much for me to get through, and I narrowed the search down. So I tried leadership definitions, and I narrowed it down to 111 million pages. I then said to myself, well, this book tonight is about leadership styles. So I'll try leadership styles on Google. And I got 59 million pages. I then realized I've got a problem. And I decided to rather read a book on leadership. So I went into Amazon.com, went to the book section, and I said, leadership. You will not believe me, but that on Amazon.com, available today for sale on leadership, is 101,812 books. I then realized I'm not going to read anything before the speech tonight, but what I did know is that it is very obvious that nobody in the world has cracked the code on leadership. If you can get 294 million pages on leadership, it is a widely researched topic that nobody has cracked the code on. And the challenge is probably best summarized in this one definition that I found on leadership, which I believe summarizes it. It says, and if I may read, unlike management, leadership cannot be taught, although it may be learned and enhanced through coaching and mentoring. I think that summarizes the whole problem of leadership. We also know that everybody can't be a leader, and it's very important in the different situations to know whether you are a leader in this situation or a follower. And Ted Turner of CNN has a sign on his desk that says, lead, follow, or get out of the way. And that's also something we need to learn as leaders, that sometimes you lead, sometimes you follow. So you have to ask yourself, why are we here tonight at the launch, if Amazon is correct, of the 101,813th book on leadership? Surely there's been enough written on leadership. I truly believe that this book is different. Not that I've read all other 101,000 others, but I have read some. And why do I say this book is different? I honestly believe it is different. I have read the book. Firstly, because it's real life stories of 9 ordinary people, and I hope my co-contributors don't mind if I refer to them as ordinary people, although they've achieved extraordinary results in life. But it's 9 stories of real people, and that's their life story, written in their own way, in very different styles, which makes every chapter very, very interesting. Secondly, which I also believe why this book is very, very different, is it contains practical examples with exercises, with valuable tips on how to improve your leadership style. I've never seen that in another book before. You always read somebody else's story, but what's in it for me? This book is at the end of every chapter, these valuable tips on how do you change as a leader and enhance your leadership skills. In the preface of the book, Gail says the book should be read, and I'm going to read this, by those involved in executive learning, business schools, and anyone attending an executive development program. I want to respectfully differ from Gail. When I read this book, it dawned on me that this book is much, much more than leadership theories. And I don't think that's probably the intention when it was set out and written. It's a history lesson about South Africa, and in fact about the insanity of our past, and how people had to overcome obstacles. In fact, Mr. Bakwa's chapter, I think is an important history lesson in general, which all of us should read. When I read the incredible stories of the people and the obstacles they had to overcome, I can't help to think of Bill Gates' recent speech to a United States graduation class, where Bill Gates gave them the Bill Gates 11 rules of life. And his first rule that Bill Gates always quotes, and I quote him, he said to the students, life is not fair, get used to it. And I can't believe the setbacks, political setbacks, financial, emotional, health, that people had to overcome to achieve what they've achieved in life. So this book is a lot more more than leadership. It's about hard work and dedication, perseverance. I mean, Jacob and Cindy and Monica's stories are enough to ensure that I will buy the first 2 books tonight for my 2 teenage kids who are at university, that they can read about perseverance and hard work. Now, I know my kids, being teenagers, won't read my chapter because they know a hell of a lot more about life than I can ever wish to do. But if I can get them to read the other 8 chapters, that will make them better children one day. Another incident of this book, which I don't think was intended, it's an incredible lesson on parenting. Without fail, Each and every one of these contributors refer to the parents that they've had, the influence that their parents had on them, the lessons that they learned from their parents, the values instilled by their parents, the sacrifices that some of these parents had to make. I couldn't believe it when I read the book. Sacrifices, 4 o'clock in the morning, doing extra work to get the kids to study. And it reminds me again of my friend Bill Gates' rules. And his rule number 5 says to the kids, flipping burgers is not beyond your dignity. Your grandparents had a different word for flipping burgers. They called it opportunity. I think this is a must-read book for every parent. But then this book, the importance of this book on leadership and coaching, without any doubt, demonstrate the importance of coaching, training, mentoring, and having role models. Everybody in the book refers to the role models that they had in their life, the coaches, the mentors. It is unbelievable to read that. And I thought of an analogy, and I said, sportsmen and women, when they become famous, they appoint a coach. They appoint it publicly. They very proudly announce to the world that they now have a coach. When they become successful, they acknowledge the contribution of their coaches. I know the Lion King, Mr. de Klerk, is here tonight. We don't talk about the fact that the Sharks won the Currie Cup up here. We don't talk about that. But when they won, all the TV commentators, all the analysts gave credit to the coaches, not to the team. Yet in South Africa, I've found that business people still sometimes think it's a sign of a weakness if you appoint a coach. Yet sportsmen and women introduce their coach to the world. And I want to give you one sports story about the importance of coaching. I bet you all know who Usain Bolt is. Fastest person in the world, fastest man in the world. I also want to bet you that you probably don't know who Richard Thompson of Trinidad and Tobago is. Never heard of him. Well, Richard Thompson last year at the Olympic Games in London ran the 100 meters in 9.98 seconds. He will one day be able to tell his grandchildren that he ran 100 meters in the Olympic Games in under 10 seconds. That is unbelievable, in 9.98 seconds. Sadly, he will have to tell his grandchildren that he came last in the race. He lost. The difference between him and Usain Bolt's time was 0.35 seconds. From the winner of the race to the last place, 0.35 seconds. Now, that 3.35 seconds put him in last place. We analyzed what Usain Bolt did in the 4 years before the Olympic Games. He had the best coaches in the world. Conditioning coaches, technique coaches, strength coaches, all these coaches. He worked with these top coaches for an estimated 3,500 hours. 6 days a week, for 3 to 4 hours a day, for 4 years. To gain 0.35 seconds, to be the fastest man in the world. So he went into the race with the best coaches in the world behind him. Mr. Thompson did it on natural talent. We don't have coaches in Trinidad and Tobago. And the difference was first place to last place. A natural talent, Mr. Thompson is probably equal to Usain Bolt. And this book contains so many stories of great examples, of great mentors, of people who put their careers in the hands of coaches. And my only advice is don't be like Richard Thompson and try and do it on natural talent only. Natural talent isn't good enough. In South Africa, we are very privileged to have lived in this era and to have known the greatest leader that the world has ever seen. We all wish we can have 10% of Mr. Mandela's leadership qualities. I refer to my co-contributors as ordinary people who achieve extraordinary things. I can never refer to Mr. Mandela as an ordinary person. But we all know his exceptional leadership qualities and that we admire in him. It's all about EQ, compassion, sincerity, humbleness, and leading by example. And you never see anything about titles, hierarchy, authority. That's what we admire in the man. The same stories and the same examples come out in this book. Nobody uses a title, nobody uses hierarchy. It's all about the real people. And to conclude, I want to tell the last story. On a recent interview that I saw on TV, this was quite amazing. I saw this, I didn't read it, I saw the interview on TV. They interviewed Malcolm Forbes. of the Forbes magazine. And he was asked what I thought was the most brilliant question by a journalist that you can ask a guy live on TV. He said, you published the Forbes magazine. It's all about investment, where to put your money. And the journalist said to him, Mr. Forbes, you are worth $250 million yourself. Where do you invest your money? Do you read your magazine? He talks about emerging markets and traditional markets. He talks about industries, upcoming oil and gas, or telecommunications, or transport, or all these industries, all these markets. Where do you put your own money? And I thought that was a tough question, but do you read your own magazine? And Malcolm Forbes said to him, no, I don't follow the advice in the magazine. He said, when I invest my own money, he replied, he said, I don't follow any of that. When I invest in a company, I only look at one thing, and that is deep down, what kind of person the CEO really is. And I'm sure if Malcolm Forbes had to read this book tonight, he will invest in any of my 8 colleagues' businesses. Because at the end of the day, after all these 101,812 books on leadership, it comes down on the real question at the end of the day, deep down, what kind of person you really are. It doesn't matter the industry, it doesn't matter the market, it's deep down what kind of person you really are. Will you invest in that individual, yes or no? So Gail, on behalf of my 8 co-contributors, I want to thank you firstly for the impact you've had on our lives, how you've changed us, and our success today is largely described to you. Thank you for your effort to convince us to contribute to the book. I know it took some pushing from your side, but thank you for keep on pushing. And I want to wish you and your great team well, and your fantastic company just the best for the future. Thank you very much for hosting us tonight, and thank you very much for everything. I thank you.
Much for that dynamic speech, Karen. Our next speaker is the author herself, Gail Cameron. And I'm not permitted to read her biography, except to say that she believes that the meaning of the book is not invented. It already exists in each one of us, and in the way that we interpret it. The duty and task of the author is to be the interpreter. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our interpreter, Gail Cameron.
That was such a wonderful speech. I mean, you're not only a gifted orator, but you are also an incredible leader. And you will leave an amazing legacy. Thank you. It's a beautiful speech. Anybody who knows Alan knows his life has been inextricably woven into sport. His father was Professor Don Swiegers, who was a Springbok selector for almost 3 decades. And it was so amazing. I was having a meeting with the Lion King last week. And if you were standing, I would just say, look for the tallest man, and you would see Kevin de Klerk. And I was in his office, and I was chatting to him about you. And he said, do you know Don coached me when I was a Springbok lock? So we have a few of our own sporting celebrities here, including Dr. Nyoka, previously of SA Cricket. So the essence of my book is captured in the beautiful words of the black poet Oswald Machali, when he said, a warrior never perishes. He is sustained by the glorious deeds of the departed. He is fearless and awaits his acclaim at the right time, where all victorious fighters dwell. Fear has no root strong enough to pierce the heart of a man challenged, whose unbridled anger tears the tiger from its lair, grabs the lion by its tail, spears the elephant on its trunk. Tears were not made to fall like rain on the grave of the warrior, to drown the indomitable spirit. We need not weep for him. His spirit lives on. He lives in us today. Machali's words echo in the spirit of the contributors of this book. It is essentially the story of Africa, of its pain and pride, of the hardship one can face in devastating times and consequence. It is the story of those who had the courage to live their lives to its full potential. The contributors know that it is only out of hardship that there are gains of self-development. There are stories in this book that will enthrall and devastate you. There are stories that will make you weep. You will become enraged by a society so immutable that only the bravest souls could navigate their path through. Such are the stories in this book of real people who live now. Such are the stories of Africa. Such are the stories that need to be told to help others. The concept of the book began about 13 years ago when I first met Peter Mageza. And at that time, Peter was heading up Bankfin at ABSA. And there was something very special about Peter. He captivated my imagination. He woke me up to the incredible hardship that so many people had endured. His story touched my heart, and I knew from that moment that my life was going to be different. But I need to take you back just a few years earlier and tell you what preceded meeting Peter and hearing his story. My son Stuart, he's here this evening, was diagnosed with a brain tumor when he was 9 years old. And the surgeons removed the tumor, and he came through the surgery really well. But that night, Stuart became really ill, and the specialists were baffled. He'd come through the surgery, but now they were fighting to save his life. And I could do the only thing that a mother can do, and I got on my knees and I began to pray. And I just said, if you let him live, I will do your work. And I didn't stop until the morning came. And in the morning, the specialists had said, we now have to cut him open and take out his appendix, because his appendix must have burst. And having given permission for that, I didn't think Stuart would survive the surgery when a doctor just appeared out of nowhere. He said, my name is Dr. Teichard. I don't operate here, but I believe you have a problem with your son. Which I said, I do. He said, I recognize a smell. Do you mind if I test for this bacteria? And can you sit tight for a couple of hours? Which I did. And then he came back to me, he said to me, your son does not have a burst appendix. He's developed a deadly virus, which if left untreated is fatal. They put him on the right antibiotics, and within 4 days, Stuart was out of hospital. Well, he was out of ICU and put into high care. That was one of the defining moments of my life, and I knew from that moment that my work would change, and that whatever we do at the IE Group was going to be about empowering other people. So, the book is a compilation of leadership stories, as Alan has said, written by these incredible people that I've coached over the last 20 years. And the stories are compelling because they reflect an authentic African leader's unique indigenous culture, values, norms, historical underpinnings, traditions, but most importantly, it is about how they dealt with adversity, how they overcame these incredible challenges. And when I say authentic African, I mean black and white, male and female, and even some leaders who were not born here have made their mark here as a leader and who have made incredible contributions to our society. We are all connected. We need to know that, and we really need to begin to respect that. Writing one story can have profound consequences. Not only is it extremely cathartic, but there's also something about reading your life on paper that can be very life-changing indeed. And I respect those contributors who allowed me to write their stories and then elected to withdraw them from publication. It remains an intensely personal journey of self-discovery. But the most profound reason for these stories is that they help others. They enable courage. They offer support in times of darkness as they celebrate the resilience of the human spirit. I've shared some of these stories at a few conferences, one recently at the Citadel conference, and when you see the emotion on the face of the listeners, they sit amazed, inspired, changed by these stories. When you read this book, you will know that we have the most incredibly competent leaders in this country. It's just a pity more of them aren't politicians. But there is a golden thread that runs through each story, and that indeed is an intrinsic, non-negotiable characteristic of each leader, and that is ethics and compassion. It's exactly what Alan talked about. And, you know, as Suresh stated in the foreword to the book, there's no one-size-fits-all in leadership, but there are certain key traits that are characteristics in these leaders. And such are the leaders presented in this book. As Suresh writes, let us never forget the words of John F. Kennedy when he said, "I am certain that after the dust of centuries has passed over our cities, we too will be remembered not for victories or defeats in battle or in politics, but for our contribution to the human spirit." Before I conclude, I would like to thank each leader for having the courage and the arm wrestling, Salvi, for Green, to write their story. It took courage to do this, but take heart. These stories are going to touch people's lives for many years to come. I would also like to thank to my incredible team of coaches who change our clients' lives every day. Our secret is coherence. It's pure physics. It's just one magnifying part on another part that leads to a sum greater than the total sum. You inspire me with your work and with your energy. To my marketing team, especially Ewan and Kylie, thank you for everything that you've done. And Kylie, for the new kid on the block, you've done a hell of a job. Thank you. And also I'd like to thank my publishers, Revan and Angelo, who are sitting right at the back from Real Africa Publishers. They are amazing, and it's been an absolute pleasure to work with you. And volume 2 is already on its way. I have 3 chapters written. Lastly, I would also like to thank Citadel, who are the sponsors of the book, and they've made a meaningful difference in my life. And that story appears at the back. I'm going to conclude with the words of Steve Biko, because it just captures the essence of what this book is all about, when he said, "No doubt, the great Western powers have made an enormous contribution to technology and the machinery of war. The really great lessons of life, namely that concerning humanity, will come from Africa." Thank you.